I'm sort of doing this backwards. What I really need, I need a low pinion carrier in the rear so that I can mock up drive shafts. Obviously, I also need a Atlas transfer case. All right, this will be the intro to video number 11, episode 11. Man, we are moving and shaking here. I feel like this is going a little bit slow, but maybe, well, in terms of time, over the last couple of weeks or months, it seems to be going slow. But in terms of actual hands-on time on the chassis, it's going really fast. It seems to be going a lot faster than my last build, which was Striker 3, Kevin Jones build. And I think hopefully it's because I'm learning each time and getting a little bit more efficient and faster. So you saw the last two episodes, I was struggling with those axles, and you know what I determined was they are what they are. They're home built axles. I don't think they're going to be 100% perfect, simply because I don't have the tooling or the fixtures or the setup to basically build them from the get-go 100% CNC cut, bent, whatever you want to call it. There's some little idiosyncrasies, is that how you say it, with the axles, and they are what they are. At any rate, they're going to be great for mock-up, and I would personally use them and run them myself. They're straight. I've got them as straight as I possibly can. The rear axle was the one that was kind of a bear because it was so pulled out because of that rear truss. And if you haven't seen those or seen those videos, you can catch up with those on episodes number 9 and 10 and kind of see what I was going through in building those axles. But we're going to move on, and we're going to talk about drivetrain, and we're going to talk about link geometry and axle setup, and yeah, we're going to proceed. And so the original goal with this was to try to get it built into a roller and take it down to the King of the Hammers 2023. And I'm on track to do that. I'm debating on whether or not I still want to do that. I need to make sure I have a booth space for it, and I'm going to need to get some wheels. I still need to buy unit bearings so I can make sure I can roll this thing around. And the unit bearings will be the next purchase anyway, because I need to mock up tires and wheels so I can start articulating and kind of go from there. The roller part and setting up the links and the link geometry is all going to be temporary. It's going to be just tacked in because I'm sort of doing this a little bit backwards, whereas I do not have third members yet. I have carriers, but I don't have complete third members with ring and pinion yoke or flange to where I can set up mock-up drive shafts and make sure pinion angles and everything are happy. The goal of this build was to get it set up as a roller so that I had link tab locations solidified on the chassis side so I could easily duplicate that on the next build and get it to the point of a roller and try to sell it. So I'm building this chassis as a spec chassis, get it to the point of a roller and put it up for sale. Now, these axles that I built can either go with it, with the disclaimer that they're home built axles. You guys have seen what I went through to get these built and what they are. or I will keep the axles and use them for the next build or for mock-up or whatever I'm doing. So, all right, so I'm gonna turn the camera around here. I'm just sort of off the cuff this morning. Just wanted to get in front of the camera and kind of tell you guys where I'm at. All right, so normally this is where I step in and say, all right, good morning. But we already had that little intro, and we're gonna start talking about drivetrain here. So what I've got here is I've got this temporary tube kind of put in place. I haven't got these front end tubes bent yet, simply because I'm trying to figure out if I want to take this and put an inward bend in it. And I don't think I'm going to do that until I figure out my uppers on, or at least get some temporary upper link mounts in place on this axle housing. Obviously, this is the front axle housing. This is the second one I built here in the shop. You saw me doing that on the last video. And this is where, inside of this tape, is where I need to trim it. I already did all the math. That's where I need to trim it for my 72-inch WMS. That's what this axle is going to be built to. 72-inch WMS with the Spider-Trax outers and unit bearings. So yeah, so it needs to be trimmed there, trimmed there. C's will go on place, knuckles, unit bearing, tire and wheel. And so we kind of already know that, well, let me back up. Obviously, LS drivetrain, this happens to be a pickup 5.3 out of a Silverado, I think a 05 Silverado pickup. Turbo 400. And what I'm trying to do is place it in the chassis to where we're going to go with Atlas transfer case, and the output on the transfer case is just over this subframe cross member. So we want the pivot on our pivot on our rear drive shaft just over that cross member, or maybe a little bit forward of it. So once I get those measurements sort of solidified, I'll go ahead and put in some, I'll tack in some motor mounts here, and just so I have sort of those numbers to measure from, and kind of put that in my logbook for the next build. So trying to make sure that a person can run this with truck accessories, which is that accessory depth there. I went down a whole rabbit hole the other day learning about that. Different LS-based engines have different accessory depths, which to my understanding is basically the center line of the belt, the depth this way. I guess Camaros, Corvettes, F-bodies, they have a little bit different depth on the belt accessory drive. So I want to make sure that a guy can take and pull an engine or get a junkyard engine out of a Silverado pickup, whether it be a 5.3 or LQ9. And all right, brief interruption. So trying to build this chassis, or the goal is to build this chassis to where you can get a 5.3 LQ9, which is the 6-liter, or you know, LS1, LS2 from the junkyard, whatever that, you know, LS platform is, and be able to run this with a standard truck height intake, standard truck depth accessories. You're going to have to get a different oil pan, because the truck oil pan is really tall, doesn't need to be that tall. And this is a Summit Racing oil pan. I can throw the part number in below. It's only got a 6-inch depth to it, so it allows for plenty of room for running the truck intake. And the other thing I did buy, and I got them coming, is some off-the-shelf headers. They're a shorty header. I don't think they're a block hugger header, they're a shorty header. And we're gonna see if I can get a set of off-the-shelf headers to work with this current frame width, because we're a little bit tight right in here. And I already know with this current frame width that the standard manifolds, that pickup truck manifolds that come on the engine will not work. They run into the frame rail down here. So I've got headers coming. We'll see if we can mock those up and see if we can get those to work. If not, there's a couple other companies that build aftermarket LS swap headers. And what I'm thinking is the headers that have the primaries that are turned up before they come back down will give me a little bit of depth room to work with here. And so I've got a set coming from Summit, easy enough to return if they don't work. I don't want to have to modify the headers if I don't have to. I don't want to have to build my own headers if I don't have to. I want to be able to buy a set of off-the-shelf headers for that purpose. So a guy that's building one of these chassis can go and get a set of off-the-shelf headers from Summit Racing or Jegs or one of the major suppliers, and go ahead and run with it. The other thing I've got coming is accessory drive that locates the CBX steering pump down low here, alternator right here. And the reason I need that is because I need to make sure that I have clearance for the pulley and the links. Nothing is running into one another and everything's happy. So that pretty much covers drivetrain. Right now we're set up at roughly 117-inch wheelbase. I may push the back end back a little bit because I am going for, in the back, I want to try to run a low pinion, which would be a lot more budget friendly. Obviously a low pinion 9. In the front, a high pinion 9. And I've got measurements from Kevin and Kevin's current build with his high pinion 9, and I know roughly how tall I need to make these upper link mounts to get everything to clear and be happy with that really high drive line. So I'm sort of doing this backwards. What I really need, I need a high pinion carrier. I need a low pinion carrier in the rear so that I can mock up drive shafts. Obviously, I also need a Atlas transfer case, but we are talking, you know, let's be honest, we're talking thousands of dollars there. If I can find them used, which is pretty hard to do. It's pretty hard to find a used Atlas. Well, maybe it's harder to find a used high pinion carrier than it is to use Atlas, but they are at a premium right now. So I'm sort of doing this backwards in that I'm going to be building temporary links and temporary geometry out here at the axle side, more so, without those components. And really, a guy needs to have those components to get everything solidified. But my plan is, when I say temporary, is I'm just going to build links out of some 1 3/4 Hiru that I have. It's already bought and paid for. It's on the rack, and it's obviously less expensive than DOM. And making mock-up links with that Hiru, I can go ahead and hack it up, extend it, shorten it, whatever I need to do. I can tack in the hind bungs on the end of that Hiru, and I can make this thing a roller. And that's the goal. I want to make this thing a roller so I can get this thing out in front of people and put it up for sale. So that's the goal. That's kind of where I'm at with this. And I'm going to go ahead and throw the camera up, maybe get a little bit of time-lapse coverage with the GoPro so you guys can kind of see what I'm doing. There probably won't be very much more dialogue in this particular video. I just wanted to go over the drivetrain, my goals with wheelbase, and where I'm headed and what the next step is in my build. So anyway, thank you guys for watching. Thanks for all the support. Thank you for the comments on the videos. Especially, it seems like the axle videos sort of got some people to comment, and I really appreciate it, you guys. I'm doing this sort of shooting from the hip on a lot of the stuff I'm talking about. None of this is scripted. It's probably pretty obvious because I can be redundant at times. All right, here we go. So I think we're starting on the rear here. I've got this mock-up fuel cell made out of cardboard. This is a Jeep Speed. This is patterned after a Jeep Speed Jazz brand Jeep Speed 32-gallon fuel cell. And so I've got these outriggers on the chassis table here. I've got some old tubing here and this old tray that I saved off a welding bench that was given to me. And I'm going to go ahead and tack weld or weld this tray to this tubing so I can suspend that across the width of the chassis table and throw my jack stands on there. That way I can go ahead and throw the rear axle up there and get it as high as I need to for, you know, to simulate bump. And then from there, I'll probably end up putting these tubes in here that go on the back of the chassis. They'll follow this angle here on the fuel cell, and then I'll start working on doing link tabs at the chassis side. Okay, this is where we're at. I'm gonna go ahead and close this video out, talk about what I did today a little bit. I decided I wanted to go ahead and start working on this lower rail in here before I located or started working on locating this rear axle. So this mitered section is gonna follow that bottom line of the fuel cell. And I'll go ahead and put the fuel cell in there real quick so you can kind of visualize what that's for. I went ahead and just tacked in these link mounts. I already had these made up, and I've already figured out that they are the wrong angle. So I've got to trim this outside of link mount and get it angled back that way a little more. And then let's see if I can get a shot of the link mount on the chassis. So that is also at the wrong angle. So if you look at this pole, that kind of gives you a visual of this link and sort of where it wants to land. And if I leave the chassis mount at that same angle, I'm actually probably pretty good. I just need to slide these link mounts out more. And I'm debating on whether or not to do that, or take and run these links outboard, because I've been told by Kevin and Kevin's shock tuner, they want these lowers on a trailing arm to be a little bit more parallel, not so triangulated. So that's something Kevin's trying. He's trying out. The chassis is designed to have this lower link mount in board of this upright tube. So basically where it's at right now. So the debate is whether or not to mount that outboard. I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do there yet. The one thing I do know is that I cannot mount this link or I can't mount the link mount here or the link tabs without lifting the chassis up a little bit, because the way these tabs register, they register underneath the tube a little bit. So the chassis has got to be lifted up just slightly so I can get those in there. I may even try to rotate them down, which might be a good thing. If I don't mount them on the outside of here, I might rotate them down or lengthen them just a little bit so we have room to slide our bolt in and out. So a couple things there, a couple ideas that I'm sort of mulling over. This is a good spot to stop and just step back and look at things and kind of consider and decide what I'm doing. So yeah, obviously I got to move these out a little bit, and because I want to sort of shoot that window there for that upper or that lower link, and then the upper link will be coming across there. So yeah, so we're going to go ahead and close this video out. A little bit of progress. It's starting to take shape, looking pretty cool. Sort of got an axle location, and anyway, thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, share, and we'll see you next time.